In the story, The Best Investment I Ever Made, you saw how a helping hand transformed Mr. John into a selfless supporter of humanity. Go through the poem The Ballad of Father Gilligan by W.B. Yeats. The theme of the poem is about the presence of God everywhere and His love for all. The poem is about Father Gilligan, who rendered selfless service to the poor and the needy in his parish, and a miracle happened in his life. A brief description about the author. William Butler Yeats, or W.B. Yeats, was born in 1865. He is an Irish poet and one of the foremost figures of 20th century literature. In 1923, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature for his inspired poetry. Yeats is one of the few writers who completed his greatest works after being awarded the Nobel Prize, which include The Tower and The Winding Stair and other poems, and he passed away in 1939. The old priest Peter Gilligan was weary night and day, for half his flock were in their beds or under green sods lay. The poem gives an introduction to the old priest Peter Gilligan. He was weary night and day. Weary means what? Tired or fagged out. He was fagged out night and day by carrying out his priestly obligations or duties during an epidemic in Irish countryside. What was the reason for his tiredness? For half his flock were in their beds or under green sods lay. That is, he had not only give the last communion to his poor flocks. Flocks means what, children? The people in the parish. So he had not only give the last communion to his poor flocks, they were in their beds. That is, they were sick. So he had not only give the last communion to his flock were in their beds or under green sods lay. Green sods means graves covered over by green grass. That means the people dying in large numbers. So Peter Gilligan was fagged out, tired by carrying out his priestly obligations duties day and night during an epidemic in Irish countryside. He had not only give the last communion to his flock who were in their beds or under green sods lay, that means they were dying in large numbers. Once, while he nodded in a chair at the moth-hour of the eve, another poor man sent for him, and he began to grieve. One day, at the moth-hour of the eve, moth-hour, moth means insects, so moth-hour of the eve, that means the presence of insects indicates it as evening time. We know that moth comes at the evening time. So once at the evening time, while he nodded in a chair, nodding means moving one's head up and down. Here, one day due to his tiredness, he is about to sleep on his chair. At that time, another poor man sent for him, and he began to grieve. At that time, someone calls for the priest's help. The priest feels upset about being called, and he began to grieve. Grieve means what? Feel sorrow. I have no rest, nor joy, nor peace, for people die and die. And after cried he, God, forgive, my body spake, not I. His continuous help to the needy people and his tiredness makes him to get upset. Because of his tiredness, he said that I have no rest nor joy, nor peace, for people die and die. That is, he does not have rest, happiness, or peace, as people under his parish die continuously. And after cried he, God, forgive, my body spake, not I. Immediately he feels sorry for saying such words, because it is his God-given duty to look after the parishioners. Children, spake means here speak. So he begs God to forgive him, because those words are spoken by his body, not by him. He knelt, and leaning on the chair, he prayed and fell asleep. And the moth-hour went from the fields, and the stars began to peep. Father Gilligan knelt down on the floor to get forgiveness from God, and he started praying, and due to his tiredness, he fell asleep. And now the moth-hour went from the fields, and the stars began to peep. That is, now the insects have gone, and the stars begin to appear. As night starts, the sky is filled with stars. They slowly into millions grew, and leaves shook in the wind. And God covered the world with shade and whispered to mankind. They slowly into millions grew, and leaves shook in the wind. As night starts, the sky is filled with the stars. The stars grew into millions, and due to the flow of wind, the leaves are falling from the trees. And God covered the world with shade and whispered to mankind. God covers the world with the darkness and speaks slowly to mankind. Whispered, that is, speaks slowly to mankind. Upon the time of sparrow chirp, when the moths came once more, the old priest Peter Gilligan stood upright on the floor. Upon the time of sparrow chirp, when the moths came once more. Here, chirping of sparrows indicate the early hours of morning time, and the moths, that is the insects, come once more. At that time, the old priest Peter Gilligan stood upright on the floor. Father wakes up from the sleep. He is shocked to know that he slept for a long time. Mavren, the man has died while I slept in the chair. He roused his horse out of its sleep and rode with a little care. Mavren, the man has died while I slept in the chair. Mavren means an expression of sorrow. He blames himself by saying that the person who needed his help might have died. So he roused his horse out of its sleep. Rouse means to wake somebody up from deep sleep. He roused his horse out of its sleep and rode with a little care. He rides his horse with a little care, that is, very fast. He rode now as he never rode, by rocky lane and fen. The sick man's wife opened the door. Father, you come again. He rode now as he never rode, by rocky lane and fen. Lane means narrow path. Fen means a low, flat, wet land. So he rides rashly over narrow roads and wetlands and reaches the sick man's house. And sick man's wife opened the door. By seeing the father, she wonders that he has come again. And is the poor man dead? He cried. He died an hour ago. The old priest Peter Gilligan, in grief, swayed to and fro. Gilligan asks whether the man died, and the wife replies that he died an hour ago. And the old priest Peter Gilligan, in grief, swayed to and fro. Sway means move rhythmically backwards and forwards. So, after hearing this, in sadness, the priest walked to and fro. When you were gone, he turned and died, as merry as a bird. The old priest Peter Gilligan, he knelt him at that word. Again the woman said that after the priest had left from there, the sick man died in a peaceful manner. Hearing such word, Father Gilligan knelt on the floor. He who hath made the night of stars for souls who tire and bleed, send one of these great angels down to help me in my need. He who hath is here has. So he who has made the night of stars, that is, he says that God has made the stars at night for souls who tire and bleed, that is, to comfort the souls, to comfort the tired and suffering ones. Send one of these great angels down to help me in my need. That is, he might have sent one of his angels to help the Father. God has made night for the troubled humanity. So he says that God has made the night of stars to comfort the tired and suffering ones. He who is wrapped in purple robes with the planets in his care had pity on the least of things, asleep upon a chair. He who is wrapped in purple robes with the planets in his care had pity on the least of things, asleep upon a chair. He who is wrapped means here dressed. He who is wrapped in purple robe means a long loose piece of clothing worn as a sign of rank or office. So he who is wrapped in purple robes, that is, God is a king in purple color robes and takes care of all the planets, that is, with the planets in his care. He who is wrapped in purple robes with the planets in his care, that is, God is a king in purple color robes and takes care of all the planets, had pity on the least of things asleep upon a chair. It shows that God has many big responsibilities. Even with such responsibility, God had pity on a simple person like Father Gilligan when he slept. God helped him by sending an angel. Father Gilligan feels grateful to God for being kind and merciful to him. The poem shows the love and care of God for whom all the lives are equal and important.